the crux of our findings, of this report, which was released last May, was that a silent coup had taken place, and this had been executed by a power elite led by the Gupta-Zuma networks. And this power elite had captured key state institutions and repurposed them for private gain.
You speak about various incidents that took place over that period, particularly the centralization of the system by Jacob Zuma. Talk to us about how systems within government were refashioned to suit this purpose.
Well, one of the key mechanisms was to reorganize the boards of state-owned enterprises, and then from there to shift around and reshuffle the top executive teams of the state-owned enterprises, and then via the tender and procurement system to redirect resources into a favored set of networks. So that was one key strategy. The other key strategy was to reorganize the security services to ensure that the good cops were taken out and some loyal cops brought in, and for the NPA to be tamed, so it wouldn't take action against corruption.
How pivotal was National Treasury in this remolding of the state?
Well, the National Treasury has always held out against state capture and corruption under the leadership of Pravin Gordhan and Nene. But with the cabinet reshuffle at the end of March, that was seen as the final move to capture the National Treasury, which in turn would have given the power elite control of the Financial Intelligence Center, the PIC, the Chief Procurement Officer, and the right to issue guarantees, which people suspected at the time was key to the nuclear deal.
Just speak to us a little bit about how state-owned entities like Eskom and Transnet became what you call the centerpieces, essentially, of this focus on SOEs as driving this policy of radical economic transformation that the former president had been touting so strongly.
Well, Transnet, it began with Transnet with the appointment of Brian Molefe, who moved basically from the PIC, where he was chief executive, through to Transnet, which took place coterminously with a reshuffling of key positions within the board, and followed shortly thereafter, literally almost within months, with the concluding of the deal with the Chinese around cranes and locomotives. And it's been well documented, how much is being shaved off to the benefit of intermediaries, and probably that's going to be a key focus of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. So once really Brian Molefe had kind of done the business at Transnet, he was moved over to Eskom, where he basically repeated the same modus operandi. And the Optimum deal was key, and that deal was essentially where Minister Zwane flew to Switzerland to meet with Glencore to strong-arm Glencore into selling the Optimum mine to the Guptas. And Brian Molefe ensured that Eskom effectively extended 600 million to the Guptas to facilitate that 2.1 billion rand deal. So those were the kinds of things that happened, are just examples really of the way in which state-owned enterprises were repurposed and used for very specific benefits.
In your mind, Prof, how does one go about unraveling this, particularly in the Cyril Ramaphosa presidency era?
There's no silver bullet. It's much easier to destroy institutions than to rebuild them. So what has taken maybe a couple of years to dismantle could take 10 years to rebuild. So obviously the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, but that's retrospective. It deals with the bad guys who caused all this bad business and destruction to the detriment of the majority of South Africans. But so we need to strengthen the NPA and make sure we get a boss of the NPA that we can trust and all have faith in. We can be very grateful that the courts have remained independent and have been a key bulwark against state capture, thanks to the actions of civil society. And we need strong leadership within the cabinet. So unfortunately, the cabinet is probably fairly divided. So we need probably a very strong presidency and a policy unit within the presidency that's going to craft an economic policy framework that's going to get us back on track. In the meantime, we have to restructure all the state-owned enterprises, and that's a massive, massive job. And we need to make sure that it's not entrusted entirely to consultants. We need to have real good executive teams to drive the transformations.